Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to RuralStrong. We're coming to you today from the Southwest Tennessee Development District podcast studio in Jackson, Tennessee, and we've got a special guest today. We have Miss Angie Carrier, and Angie works for the University of Tennessee Municipal Technical Advisory Service, and which is a very important organization in Tennessee that works with all of our cities. And Angie, first of all, welcome to RuralStrong.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Angie, tell the folks a little bit, number one, about MTAS and about your role at MTAS. So those folks that aren't that familiar with the way Tennessee is set up in their services for local municipalities.
Sure. MTAS with the University of Tennessee, we are within the Institute of Public Service at Tennessee. It was a land grant situation where, the university had to provide a public service. So MTAS is part of that, and we provide technical services to municipalities all across the state. We have offices from Memphis to Johnson City, so we are spread far and wide, and we provide legal, HR, police, fire, engineering, utilities, and management services to all cities that need it.
And I know, Angie, before joining MTAS, you've had a career working in municipalities. Tell us about your background.
Well, I've got a master's degree in city management from ETSU, and with that, I worked in a couple of cities as the city administrator there in Dandridge and White House, Tennessee. Then I moved over to Johnson City and was development services director there for several years. So I'm just all things cities is my experience.
Well, and MTAS provides such a needed service, and being a former small town city mayor, I know the importance of MTAS and the advice and counsel they give all the cities in Tennessee. But today we wanted to talk primarily about retail development. I look on retail development as one of the pieces of the puzzle in economic development as you try to put a strategy together in a rural community. And, we talk about recruiting industry and working with existing industry. And retail is one of those economic development engines that probably we don't focus enough on. So how did you get involved in the retail development realm with MTAS?
Well, throughout my career as a small town city manager, and you know that elected governing boards hate to raise property taxes, and you know that you want to diversify your revenues when you're a city. You don't want to totally depend on one type of revenue that's coming in. And so it has been the goal and strategy of most of the governing bodies that I've worked for is to focus on increasing sales tax revenue so it could help address any future infrastructure needs or just improve overall the financial position of the city I worked in. So in knowing that and having that plan, not just working on industry recruitment, many of the governing bodies wanted to look at the sales tax. And so I started learning about retail recruitment and started going to the conferences and joining ICSC, which is a major organization it used to be called International Council of Shopping Centers. Now it's Innovating Commerce Serving Communities. They just changed the name, but it's still the same letters. So I started attending conferences and learning and meeting developers and meeting retail real estate representatives throughout my career, and actually doing the retail recruitment for the cities I was in. So that had just been so important in my career, and in I guess fulfilling the goals of the elected bodies that I served, that I wanted to do something as a whole for the whole state. And I knew there was a gap in the services that MTAS provided as far as economic development. And I thought, well, why not start something under the umbrella of MTAS and help cities learn about the retail recruitment so they can, help diversify their revenues and start getting retail businesses in their cities.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, in the state of Tennessee, sales tax revenue is so important because in Tennessee we do not have a state income tax. And when cities put together their budgets, the revenue off the sales tax is usually the largest piece of that revenue of the budget. And I guess my question to you, Angie, is, and we're talking primarily about rural towns and cities, what do you see are some unique challenges that rural towns face when it comes to retail development?
One, I think, is the infrastructure needs. I think some smaller communities and rural communities don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to handle certain types of businesses, such as sewer. Also, you've got to look at, understand what will fit your community. So I think the overall knowledge of what you should go after as far as what you should recruit to your city that would be a good fit is important. And I don't think the rural communities completely understand that. Some may want a Target, but they may better fit an Ollie's, so those are some of the struggles I see, but having the zoning and infrastructure in place is really important, and knowing your community.
So, in your position, how do you assess the retail needs of a community? What do you do, I guess, initially to see maybe, I guess, gaps that they have and then the possibilities? How do you do that?
Well, if you join the Retail Alliance, what we use right now is Placer AI software. It's super smart in determining, what's a good fit for your community. You can do leakage reports, like what are people, where are they driving, and what are they buying outside your city limits, and does that reach a threshold to where you could have one close by in your community. But it also, you can look at a piece of property and do an analysis and see what the best fit is based on peer cities your size. So that is like an amazing tool to have to look at, okay, there are other cities like me out here, and what do they have that I don't have? And those are some of the businesses then you could target, and you could show them that you meet that criteria because your peer city over here does.
And I would say that with all the information that's available today, that some communities are probably amazed at the leakage they have to other communities. Would you agree with that?
Would, yes. And it's, once you put those numbers together, it's amazing to see.
Well, it is, and those are the things. Certainly, I know that you encourage those leaders to focus on. And talking about local leadership, how important is local community engagement in the retail development process?
Well, you've got to have a staff person assigned to it. You have to be intentional about it. But I think it needs to be a goal. At MTAS as a management consultant, and I know the other management consultants across the state, we encourage you to do strategic planning. And in doing that, and as a governing body, you come up with goals for your city and a vision and what you want to see. And then you put objectives to that vision. And somewhere in there, it's got to be increase your revenue through retail recruitment. And what do we want to look like in 20 years? So having that vision as a governing body is really important, but you need a staff member and you need to make sure that they're intentional about it. Sometimes things don't just happen. And so, being out there in front at the conferences and shaking hands and meeting developers, working with your property owners that have commercial property, saying, hey, can we help you? What do you need? That's also important. But everyone needs to be on the same page and have that same vision. And I think that's why it's great to start with strategic planning.
Absolutely, and as I talk to local government leaders, one thing I try to impress on them is there has to be a return on investment, and if a community does not invest, they can't expect much of a return. And you're talking about someone that leads these efforts. I guess, Angie, it's hard sometimes to get rural communities to write the check because I don't think you're really serious until you invest in a particular program.
Well, and I can give you an example. When I was in Johnson City, the downtown was struggling, and there were many struggles there. And Johnson City is not a rural community, but no developer and the property owners weren't investing in the downtown because the city wasn't. And once the city put Founders Park in there to deal with a lot of the stormwater and the flooding issues downtown, the city put the money up and said, we're going to protect our downtown through this park and through this drainage system. Then here comes the property owners, here comes developers, here comes investors. And they start investing in the downtown. And the city had to make that first step. And I think that showed that, okay, they're willing to put something forward. So now we are. And I think that's valuable knowledge to have to know that, investors and developers watch. And if the community doesn't care who they are, then those developers are not going to care either, because that's their personal money, that's their leverage. And if the community and the governing body doesn't decide to invest in their own community, I don't think anybody else is going to come in and save them.
I agree wholeheartedly, and we talk lots of times about what the federal government can do for you and what the state government can do for you, but at the end of the day, it's what the local people do for themselves.
You do for yourself,
that
pick yourself up, and you got to have a plan. So that's the thing is, what's most important is having a plan and working through that plan. Even if you listen to Dave Ramsey, he's always like, work those steps and work the plan. You've got to do that as a community too. And if it's baby steps, like, take care of your roads, maintain your roads, invest at least step by step with your sewer. Make sure that if you can't expand your services, make sure you take care of what you already have and maintain it. Don't just let it go, but in doing those little small things over time, then that you see a difference it can make in 10 years.
Absolutely. And I remember the late great Governor Ned Ray McWhirter, one of his favorite sayings was plan the work and work the plan. And that's exactly
Yes.
what you're saying. Let's talk a little bit about retail and in a rural community and how do they compete with e-commerce? Is there a niche there? Do they need to incorporate e-commerce as part of their business strategy?
Yes,
What's your views on that, Angie?
yes, they do. I know some small towns that I consult for, um, especially through COVID, and that's a great example of that. They began their little boutique shops in small rural America would make these amazing Instagram videos and everything about some of their specialty items in their store, and they would sell out. And I had the town administrator tell me about it, and she was like, it was amazing. So now they've created this presence online. They may not get all their foot traffic from the locals. They sell now a majority of their business online, just making an Instagram presence and a Facebook presence. So I think that you need all of that to make it now in the world, not just foot traffic. Make a presence online, highlight a scarf you have in your store, or a mug or something like that. People buy things online all the time now. And so I think local entrepreneurs need to look at that business model and that plan. And that's one thing that the Retail Alliance, some of the data that we have, it's called Experian Mosaic data. It can show you how to market to your type of customer. So you can like outline that area and what type of customer comes in there and shops there. And then it shows a marketing strategy for those types of people. And so if you want to grow that business and market more towards that type of individual that's attracted to your store, then you have that data and it and you can be intentional about it.
So the MTAS Retail Alliance program takes a holistic approach to retail development. You look at the data, you look at leakage, you look at gaps that you have. And so a community that wants to get involved with the services you provide, you can pretty much provide all the services they need. Is that correct?
We can provide all the data that they need. They've got to use the data to their advantage, and they have to put it forth. Talk with their local retailers to try to help their existing businesses. I know when I was the city administrator in White House, one of my favorite things to do, back then, that data was available too, and would present it at the Chamber of Commerce to the existing businesses, and they loved hearing that type of data, because then it helped them and informed them, and it helped them with their own business. So it's really important, not just recruiting new, but keeping your existing businesses there as well, because that's something I think that retailers look at. Are the existing stores staying? Are they treated well? Are they being taken care of? Um, so all of that is important. It is a holistic approach, but depending on your individual community, what do you need? What's most important for you? What kind of data do you need to get started? And I always say that you think of your top three commercial sites, whether it's a empty space or it's a vacant lot. And then let's look at, if those are your three prime locations, let's do some reports to see what's the best fit for those. And then turn around and start reaching out to those folks, of course, along with the property owner, because you can't go out as a city and recruit something for a specific lot if it's not at a reasonable price, if it's not for sale, and all of those things. So you have to work with your community and within your community to make these things happen. And it's all of this is centered around a relationship, and everything is a relationship when it comes to retail.
And there are tools out there to help local leaders. I'd like to get your thoughts on using tax increment financing, a TIF, to recruit retail. What's your thoughts on that? And do you see more rural communities being open to using that avenue in recruiting retail?
It just depends, Joe. The thing is of course, a business coming into your community, they're not going to come there unless they can make some money. That's just bottom line. If a TIF helps them get over that hump, then maybe it would help. I think it's a case by case basis when looking at TIFs. You got to look at the whole plan. The thing is, if a business, and a lot of it has to do with the lot itself. If it costs too much to develop that lot, if the ground's bad, if it's just not working, a lot of times they'll walk away regardless of a TIF or not. Sometimes I think it's difficult for smaller communities to do a TIF than it is for larger.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly because I know back in my days of being a mayor, when we began looking at a TIF, of course, we had pushback from local businesses that had been in the community for years and supported everything that happened in the community. And I guess, what they would tell us is, you didn't give us anything. And it's that perception that you're giving something, and I think there's a real educational process that has to be done in trying to initiate a TIF in a rural community.
Yeah, and an economic plan has to be put together these days too and submitted to the state for approval. So the numbers have to work, and it has to be good for the community too. You can't just give the farm away anymore. And that's a good thing, because I think some communities in the past, when they tried these, may have gotten themselves into trouble and gotten too deep into it. But it's always good to get one of your attorneys in one of the firms that do these economic plans.
Sure.
And put the numbers together and see if it actually works. But I don't think most cases that a TIF would be a deciding factor for a retailer to come in. Once those doors open, they still have to make money, and that TIF is really not making them money. It's helping them with the site and develop the site.
Right.
And so, just depends. And I'll keep it at that, because it really is a case by case basis.
Do you see, Angie, that specific retail sectors that tend to perform better in rural areas?
I think it just depends. If there's a lot of sports in these rural areas, because everybody loves their baseball tournaments and all of those things, I think that kind of sector helps, like your Hibbets or something of that nature. And those dollar stores love rural areas. They hit those up everywhere they go. And then I think one of the thresholds is, like, once you get your first fast food store in your rural areas, then things are starting to move up for you. I think that's because you would be surprised how much money just for a small community one fast food restaurant can do. But the moms and pops, they can do well in rural communities. If you have an entrepreneur that, is thinking about doing something, those types of places like your Ace Hardwares and those sorts of things, those are gathering places for rural communities. Um, so, but the smaller footprint stores do well, but it's harder for the big boxes and that sort of thing. So that's not something you expect. But once you get a few things in, then you create that synergy, and you've got
Well, and I
business
think,
off of each other.
yes, and I think, and this goes back to the information that's available out there, uh, but you have to be realistic. You have to know, what retail outlets match your demographics. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things to do because, they all of the communities that I work with, lots of times they look for retail that nothing about their community matches that particular retail establishment, and particularly when you talk about restaurants. So, what advice would you give an entrepreneur who's looking to start a retail business in a rural setting?
Well, and that's where I think you look at the demographic, you look at the traffic counts. You've got to see what the development costs are. If there's an existing location you can go in, and you've got to put a business plan together. You know, a business plan's always important to see what's going on, but I would say look at traffic count and to determine where the most highly trafficked type of vehicle is going, whether it's ingress, egress, it's in the morning or in the afternoon or whatnot. You've got to get on a high traffic area so people see you and they can stop in. But I know some really small town coffee shops that do really well too. So I think it just depends on what type of business you're looking at.
I can tell, Angie, you've got a passion for what you do. And so, what's some of the most rewarding aspects of your job when it comes to improving retail in rural towns?
Um, just one of those wins. Just to see how excited um, those cities are for getting something in or seeing that something worked or, just getting to the next step. I know the reality of real estate in retail is not an overnight thing. Normally, when the seed is planted, it may be 3 years down the road before those doors open. So you put in that work and time over a 3 year period and you see that the stores actually open. It's amazing feeling. I absolutely loved it. When I was in cities, it was like just a passion of mine because I like people. I know not everybody does, but I like people and talking to them and just going through the conferences and just sitting with them. I'll tell that one of the best things that you can do, regardless if um, that developer's right for your city right now, they could be down the road. So be friendly. Make sure they know who you are, know that you're not trying to push something on them that that they won't you don't qualify for yet, but just say hi and know them and create that relationship and see them over time, because once you go over that certain threshold of you know radius rings or demographic or whatever, you can call them because you already have a relationship with them. So the building of the relationships is the most fun, and in my experience and knowing these folks. I mean, I still talk to people in the development community from 15 years ago. So it's just one of those things that you create an entire new environment and a new network when you do retail recruitment.
And it's like anything else in small towns or even urban areas. you've got to persevere. It's a journey. As we finish up, Angie, if we've got a listener out there that wants more information on the MTAS Retail Alliance program, can they go to a website and find out information?
Yes, or you could just you can email me. My email is Angie Carrier Carrier at Tennessee edu. So just email me and I can send information on that.
Well, that sounds great. Our guest today has been Angie Carrier. She does a great job working with our communities, a wealth of information. And I want to remind everyone, if you've got a question or a comment for RuralStrong, or you want us to get you in touch with Angie or someone, you can send us an email at ruralstrong@gmail.com. Angie, thanks for being with us, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Rural Strong. If you found this helpful, share it and follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.